I never thought the people who raised me, the ones who tucked me in at night, cheered me on at school plays, and sent birthday cards signed, Love, Mom and Dad, would one day try to steal the roof over my head. But that's exactly what happened. Not strangers, not scammers. My own family tried to take the home I worked my entire adult life to afford. It started on an ordinary Wednesday. I came home from a long shift, exhausted and looking forward to kicking off my shoes and curling up on the couch. But when I slid my key into the front door, it jammed. I frowned, tried again, nothing. That's when I noticed the lock had been changed. At first, I thought maybe the door was damaged or the key was worn out. But then I spotted something else. Through the window, past the half-closed blinds, I saw movement. Someone was inside, someone who wasn't me. My heart pounded, my skin went cold. That was my living room, my couch, my curtains. And yet, there was a strange lamp glowing in the corner, a diaper bag on the floor, and unfamiliar voices echoing down the hall. I wasn't just locked out. Before I take you deeper into this story, I just want to say, if you've ever felt betrayed by your own family, if you've ever been treated like your boundaries didn't matter or your success made you a target, hit that like button. Subscribe if you believe justice should always find its way back around. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been stabbed in the back by someone you thought would protect you? I promise what happens next will make you feel less alone. Buying that house was one of the proudest moments of my life. It wasn't a mansion or anything flashy, just a modest 3-bedroom with a small backyard and a creaky porch swing. But it was mine. I'd worked for years to save the down payment. No help from anyone. Every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every tiny sacrifice. It all led to that moment when I held the keys in my hand. I remember standing in the empty living room, barefoot on the cool wooden floor, whispering to myself, "You did this, you're safe now." At least, that's what I believed. My parents were supportive-ish. They congratulated me, of course, but there was something about the way they said it, like they were confused how I'd managed it on my own. I'd always been the quiet one in the family, responsible, invisible, the one who never made waves. My younger brother, Jason, was the opposite, loud, charming, the golden boy. He and his wife, Kayla, had been struggling financially for years, bouncing between apartments, constantly complaining about rent and credit card debt. My parents often helped them out, even when it meant dipping into their own retirement savings. Jason always landed on his feet because someone else was always laying down to catch him. So when I bought the house, I could feel the shift. My mom made comments like, "You've got so much space now, it's almost too much for just one person, don't you think?" Or, "Jason and Kayla are still trying to find a stable place for the baby. It must be hard with a newborn." At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought she was just being sentimental. But looking back, those were the first cracks in the foundation, warnings I didn't take seriously enough. The pressure started subtly. During a weekend visit, my dad walked through the house like he was inspecting it, tapping walls, peeking into closets. At one point, he asked, "Do you really need all 3 bedrooms? Wouldn't it make sense to rent one out?" I laughed it off, telling him I liked having the space. But I saw the way he looked at Jason across the room, like they'd already decided something and I hadn't been consulted. Then came the accidental drop-ins. My brother and Kayla would show up uninvited. At first, it was framed as needing to use my dryer. Then it was the baby needed a nap and your house is quieter. I tried to be polite, but it started to feel invasive. Kayla would leave dirty bottles in the sink. Jason once left the bathroom fan on all day. And they never asked, they just acted like it was their space too. I brought it up with my mom, told her it was starting to feel like they were testing boundaries. She waved it off, said I was being sensitive. Their family, she told me, as if that somehow gave them free reign over my home. "You're lucky to have them so close." But I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I was being slowly, quietly pushed out of my own life. The visits became more frequent, less accidental, more entitled. Jason started leaving stuff behind, baby toys, a spare pair of shoes, even a phone charger plugged in beside my bed. One evening, I came home from work and found Kayla curled up on my couch watching Netflix like she lived there. No text, no warning, just there. She smiled at me and said, "Oh, I figured you wouldn't mind." That night, I didn't sleep well. My mind kept circling the same question. What exactly did they think this was? Then it got worse. I started noticing small things out of place, a cabinet door left open, a faint smell of someone else's cologne in the hallway. At first, I thought I was losing it. Maybe I'd left the cabinet open. Maybe the scent was from a coworker brushing past me. But then, one Thursday evening, I came home early and found Jason in my kitchen, helping himself to a sandwich. He didn't even flinch. Oh, hey, he said, chewing. Kayla's picking up the baby. I figured I'd wait here. Wait here? I asked, stunned. Jason, how did you even get in? He grinned and tossed a key onto the counter. Mom gave me a spare from her set, just in case. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's not okay, I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. This is my house. You don't get to just let yourself in. He gave me this look, half amused, half condescending. Chill, it's not like we're strangers, you're being dramatic. That night, I went to the hardware store and replaced the locks. Don't tell anyone, I just did it. The next morning, my phone exploded with calls and texts. Jason, Kayla, my mother. How could you be so selfish? Jason was just trying to help with some home repairs. This is family. What's wrong with you? Apparently, Jason had tried to come by again and found himself locked out. But the guilt trip was relentless. My mom called crying, saying I was dividing the family. My dad said I was being paranoid and cold. Even Kayla texted me something about how family shares everything. That's when I knew this wasn't just entitled behavior, this was a coordinated push. I stopped replying to messages. I started locking up everything, drawers, cabinets, even my bedroom door. When I left the house, I installed a security camera above the front door, just in case I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. But it turned out I wasn't being paranoid enough. Because one afternoon I came home to find my front door wide open and every light in the house on. My heart dropped. I froze at the threshold, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My front door, unlocked, wide open, every light blazing like someone had hosted a party and forgotten to clean up. I stepped inside slowly, my keys clutched tight between my fingers like a weapon. The living room had been rearranged, not completely, but just enough to send a chill down my spine. My framed photos, especially the ones of me alone, were gone from the mantle. A folded baby blanket lay across the armrest of the couch. A few baby toys littered the floor like confetti. In my kitchen, my clean counters were cluttered. A half-eaten sandwich sat on a plate in the sink, an empty coffee mug, not mine, on the table. And then I saw it. Pile of boxes, labeled. Jason and Kayla had started moving into my house. I stood there, frozen, until I heard a door creak upstairs. My chest tightened. I didn't care who it was. I just knew I couldn't let them see how shaken I was. I turned and walked right back out of the house, climbed into my car, and drove a block away before pulling over and shaking. What I felt wasn't just anger, it was something deeper, violation. They had drilled out the lock, I found out later, and just walked into my life like it was their right. I pulled up the app from my security camera offline. Of course, they'd cut the power to it. I didn't go back in that night. I booked a hotel room and sat there in silence, staring at the wall for hours. The betrayal didn't even sting anymore, it just burned. The next day, I went to the police. I showed them photos, told them about the lock being drilled. The officer asked if I had proof of ownership. I did. My name was the only one on the deed. No lease, no shared rental, no roommate agreement. What I didn't expect was what came next. Jason and Kayla had forged a rental agreement, claimed I'd agreed to let them move in, that we had a verbal deal as family. They'd even signed my name on a printout and showed it to my parents, who apparently believed it, or pretended to. The officer wasn't convinced. Do you have any video footage? He asked. I didn't, but I had something better. A receipt from the locksmith showing the lock had been professionally changed just days before, and now it was destroyed. I had emails between me and the security company about the camera installation. I had text messages from Jason casually admitting he had a key and then flipping out when it stopped working. I handed over everything. But even then, I knew the police could only do so much. It wasn't just about legal action. It was about making sure they knew they couldn't win, that they couldn't bully me out of something I built with my own two hands. That's when I stopped being scared. I started planning. The next morning, I stood outside my house, phone in hand, breath fogging in the early cold. I wasn't going in yet. I was watching, documenting. Jason's car was parked in my driveway like he owned the place. I spotted Kayla through the window waddling around in one of my oversized hoodies, my hoodie and giving their toddlers snacks in the living room. It looked like a twisted version of domestic life, a life they tried to build inside mine. But I wasn't shaken this time. I had a plan, and every minute they stayed inside was working in my favor. First, I went back to the locksmith and had the lock changed again, this time while the officer was present, to confirm my legal right to the home. Then I bought a brand new set of Wi-Fi cameras, 4 of them, and installed them discreetly around the exterior. One covered the front door, another the side window, a third was angled toward the garage. The fourth, right above the back entrance, the one Jason always thought was his secret way in. I didn't confront them yet. Instead, I left. I spent 2 more days in silence, gathering everything I needed, building the case. In the meantime, I also contacted a lawyer. I explained the situation, showed him the forged lease, the camera footage, the locksmith receipts, and the title deed. He raised his eyebrows and said, "They're squatting." That's illegal. We'll hit them with everything. Then, like clockwork, it happened. Jason tried to bring in more boxes. The footage showed him and my father carrying in some old furniture through the back gate while my mother waited in the car like she wasn't involved. The camera got it all. And that was my final straw. I went home the next morning with 2 uniformed officers, the locksmith and a locksmith witness, statement in hand. The officers banged on the door while I stood behind them, arms crossed. Jason opened it, red-eyed and clearly not expecting company. Kayla screamed from upstairs. "She can't do this," he barked at the officers. "This is our house too." One of the officers calmly replied, "Sir, the deed is in her name. You're not tenants, you're trespassing." Jason's eyes darted to me like I'd betrayed him. "We're family," he snapped. "You were supposed to help." That word, family, I almost laughed. "You broke in," I said flatly. "You drilled my lock. You forged my name. You lied to our parents. That's not family. That's fraud." Kayla stormed down the stairs with her kid on her hip, screaming about how I was throwing out a pregnant woman. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. I simply handed the officer my printed statement. Then I turned and walked back to my car while they were told to vacate the premises. I sat across the street and watched them scramble, Kayla crying, Jason yelling, my parents pulling up an hour later only to get turned away by the cops like everyone else. For once, I had silence. They were gone, but I wasn't finished. I still had to make sure they never pulled this kind of stunt again. Not with me, not with anyone. You'd think they would have learned their lesson after being kicked out by the police, but narcissists don't just stop. They regroup, they twist the narrative. The very next day, I started getting texts from extended family members. "What's going on with your parents? Your brother said you evicted them with a baby on the way. Why didn't you just let them stay until they found something?" The spin had begun. Jason, Kayla, and my parents were already out there, poisoning the well, painting me as cold-hearted, selfish, and vindictive. Apparently, I was letting the house go to waste before they stepped in to take care of it. That's how they phrased the break-in. Taking care of it, like I was some helpless child who didn't deserve the keys to her own life. And I'll admit it hurt. People I grew up with, cousins, aunts, even a few childhood friends, were messaging me like I was the villain. It was this same old dynamic I'd always hated: smile in your face, stab you in the back. I felt cornered again. But this time, I didn't retreat. I went public. I uploaded a post to Facebook and Instagram, no drama, no yelling, just screenshots, video stills from the security footage showing Jason and my father breaking in with a crowbar, a side-by-side photo of the forged rental agreement with my name literally misspelled, and finally, the police report number and statement confirming the trespass. Then, this is for the family and friends who've asked me what happened. I bought my home with my own money. I've worked for everything I have. When I wasn't home, people I trusted broke in, changed the locks, and tried to take it from me. They lied, forged documents, and spread false stories about me. I stayed silent long enough. This is the truth. That post hit harder than I ever expected. Within hours it was being shared, people messaged me apologies. A few even confessed that they'd been shown the fake rental agreement and believed it. My aunt called me in tears, furious that my mom had dragged her into it. My cousin even commented, "Damn, your receipts are ironclad. Proud of you for standing up for yourself." It felt freeing. For once, I wasn't being talked over, I was being heard. And the fallout, oh, it was delicious. Jason was publicly shamed for what he did. His Facebook was flooded with people calling him out. Kayla deleted her profile entirely. And my parents, they showed up at my door 2 days later, my mom with trembling lips, my dad refusing to make eye contact. And she said, "You didn't have to make it public." I just stared at her for a long moment, then replied, "You didn't have to break into my house." Then I shut the door in their face. That was the last time I saw them in person. But the story wasn't quite over yet because just when I thought the drama was behind me, something unexpected happened, something that would change everything. A few weeks went by, the noise died down, my post had done its job, people knew the truth, and those who had doubted me either apologized or faded into the background. The house felt quiet again, peaceful even. But I couldn't quite relax. When you grow up with people who manipulate and gaslight, your nervous system doesn't just turn off. I still flinched when I heard a knock at the door, still checked the cameras every night before bed. Then one afternoon, something arrived in the mail that I never expected, a letter from a lawyer. At first, my heart sank. My hands trembled just opening the envelope. For a second, I was sure they were suing me, maybe trying to spin this into some insane defamation claim. I braced myself as I unfolded the thick legal paper. But it wasn't from their lawyer, it was from my grandfather's estate attorney. Now, here's where things get wild. I hadn't been close to my grandfather growing up. He was a stern man, old school, quiet, didn't really express affection. But I'd visited when I was a kid, and later in my 20s, I'd sent him letters and photos of my renovation progress on the house. I didn't expect much from him, especially not after my parents basically iced me out of family holidays. But apparently, he had been paying attention. The letter explained that before he passed away, he had made several changes to his will, one of which directly affected me. He had left a small but valuable piece of commercial property in my name. It wasn't massive, a little storefront in an older part of town, but it was fully paid off, had long-term tenants, and was generating income. There was a note attached, written in his handwriting. Just one sentence: "You've got your head on straight. Don't let them dim your fire." I read that line maybe 100 times. I didn't even realize I was crying until I noticed drops soaking through the paper. It wasn't about the money. It was the validation, the recognition. Someone had seen what I'd gone through. Someone had noticed I wasn't crazy or cruel. I was just trying to live a life that wasn't built on lies. And here's the kicker. Turns out my parents had expected to inherit that exact property. They'd even told Jason and Kayla it was part of the family plan. That's why they were so desperate to get me out of my house. They thought I was the weak link, the one who didn't fight back, the one they could pressure into giving everything up. Not only had I held the line, now I owned the very asset they were counting on to support their future. The timing couldn't have been more poetic. They tried to steal from me, and karma handed me the deed to something they believed was already theirs. I didn't respond to the news. I didn't gloat. I didn't call them or message anyone in the family. I just went down to the county office, filed the ownership documents, and updated the records under my name. Quiet, clean, permanent. And that was the moment everything shifted. I was no longer playing defense. I was no longer protecting myself from their chaos. I was free. But there was still one last chapter to unfold, and it came from someone I never expected to hear from. It started with a knock at my door. Not loud or aggressive, more like a hesitant tap. I checked the security camera first, as always, and when I saw who it was, my stomach flipped. It was Kayla, standing on my porch holding a baby carrier. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home. I even reached to turn off the porch light remotely, but something about the look on her face. It wasn't smug, it wasn't entitled, it was tired, hollow, like someone who had finally run out of lies. I opened the door just a crack. "What do you want, Kayla?" She looked up, eyes rimmed red. "I'm not here to cause problems," she said softly. "Can I talk to you? Please." Against every bit of logic in my body, I let her in. I didn't invite her to sit. I just stood there with my arms crossed while she placed the baby carrier down gently on the floor and let out a long breath. And she says something I never thought I'd hear from her lips. I'm sorry. It didn't feel rehearsed. There were no crocodile tears, no fake explanations, just a broken woman who finally saw the damage she'd helped create. She told me everything that Jason had been promising her: the house, the inheritance, the family empire, that my parents had been in on it the whole time, telling them I didn't deserve any of it because I was too independent, too prideful, too selfish to share. But then the footage came out, the police report, the will, and now Jason was out of work, angry all the time, snapping at her and the baby. They were living in his friend's basement. And suddenly, Kayla realized the only person who had actually done anything for herself was the one they tried to destroy. I didn't come here to ask for money, she said. I just needed to tell you I was wrong. I didn't forgive her, not right away. Part of me wanted to scream, part of me wanted to throw her out and say, now you understand. But another part of me, maybe the part my grandfather saw, stayed calm. You didn't just go along with it, I told her. You helped them try to steal my home. She nodded, ashamed. I know, and I'll regret it every day. She picked up the baby carrier, adjusted the blanket over her daughter's tiny face, and paused at the door. You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know I'm not them, not anymore. And then she left. The silence in my house afterward felt clean, like a wound finally starting to close. I wasn't sure what to feel: vindicated, sad, relieved. All I knew was this: I had survived a war I never asked for. I had been pushed, gaslit, manipulated, and betrayed by the very people who should have protected me. And I didn't just survive, I won. But there was still one final thing I had to do before I could move on. A week after Kayla's unexpected visit, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my parents. No return address, no handwriting on the envelope, just a typed letter inside on plain white paper, signed by both of them. We've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. We regret how things escalated and hope one day you'll understand. We only wanted what's best for the family. Jason made mistakes, but he's still your brother. We are your parents and we love you. Don't let this house stand between us. Let's move forward. Love, Mom and Dad. I read it 3 times, and each time it infuriated me more. No apology, no accountability, just veiled manipulation dressed as concern. They still didn't get it. This wasn't just about the house, it was about everything: the lies, the entitlement, the way they made me feel disposable just because I refused to fall in line with their idea of family. I didn't write back. Instead, I wrote a letter of my own, not to them, but to the HOA and neighborhood board. I explained the attempted break-in, the forged lease, and the outcome of the police report. I provided a copy of the restraining order I had obtained against Jason, which included both my parents' names after the investigation revealed they had given him a spare key. That same week, I installed a tall privacy fence around my property, top-of-the-line security cameras on every corner, and a new mailbox with a lock. I made it crystal clear: no more access, no more loopholes, no more "we're family, let's talk" manipulations. Then I contacted my lawyer one final time and asked him to update my will. I added a clause: if anything ever happened to me, the house would go to a women's shelter charity, not to my family, not to Jason, not to anyone who once thought they could take it from me. It wasn't just about protecting myself, it was about protecting the power I had fought so hard to reclaim. This house wasn't just a building anymore, it was a symbol, a reminder that I didn't need their permission, approval, or presence in my life to succeed. A few months later, I hosted a small housewarming barbecue with the friends who had stood by me during it all. We laughed, we grilled, we filled the space with music and warmth. For the first time in a long time, the house felt like mine, not just legally, but emotionally. As the sun dipped below the trees, I stood alone on the back porch, drink in hand, watching people I loved enjoy the home I had built on my own terms. And I thought to myself, they tried to take this from me. But in the end, all they did was make me stronger. It's been over a year since that whole mess unfolded, since my family tried to break into my home, tried to manipulate me with a fake lease, and then pretended like it was all just a misunderstanding. I haven't spoken to my parents since, not once. At first, I thought that would hurt more. I thought I'd cry every holiday, feel hollow on birthdays, and question whether I'd made the right choice. But the truth? I've never felt lighter. There's a strange kind of peace that comes from cutting out toxic people, especially when those people once held the power to make you feel small. I used to think being a good daughter meant sacrifice, that love had to be earned by giving up what made me happy, that family meant obedience. I don't believe that anymore. Love without respect is manipulation, family without boundaries is control, and forgiveness without accountability is just permission for them to do it again. I don't hate my family. I don't sit around stewing in bitterness, but I also don't owe them anything anymore. Not my time, not my silence, and definitely not the home I worked years to build. As for Jason and Kayla, they moved to another city after he lost his job. From what I've heard, things haven't been going well financially. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little satisfaction knowing they're finally dealing with the consequences of the entitlement that once drove them. But more than anything, I feel proud of myself, proud that I stood my ground, proud that I didn't cave when it would have been easier to just keep the peace, and proud that I finally started defining my worth by my own standards, not by theirs. Sometimes revenge isn't about screaming or slamming doors. Sometimes it's about building a life so strong, so stable, so rooted in self respect that no one can ever take it away from you again. And that's exactly what I've done. I built my home, I rebuilt my boundaries, and I reclaimed my voice. And I'm never giving any of it back.